Okay, I don't know if you can read it. I'm going to read it. The land ethic simply enlarges the boundaries of the community to include soils, waters, plants, and animals, or collectively, the land. In short, a land ethic changes the role of Homo sapiens from conqueror of the land community to plain member and citizen of it. It implies respect for his fellow members and also respect for the community as such. And that's from our state hero, Aldo Leopold. Okay. And everybody, welcome. These are the 7 principles of UU. And I think we're doing equity today. Oops, no, we're not. We're confused. All right. Well, I think we're kind of doing interdependence because we're going to also be talking about community. So choose your own adventure. And that is our, that's kind of the program. And these are the opening words. And you can read them off there, but I'm going to read them out of this book because it was given to me by a member of the UU long time ago named Dorothy Tharp, who was just a wonderful person. And she was great. She wrote the story of her life, and she called it The End of the Road because she was in her 80s. And then she decided to move to Ohio, and she said, I should have named that book The Bend in the Road. So that's kind of the sparkle that she had. So let's read it together. Devotion. The heart can think of no devotion greater than being shore to the ocean, holding the curve of one position, counting an endless repetition. And when you imagine that and try to figure out what it means, you think of the waves repeatedly coming, and that's sort of what it's like to care for people, to be devoted to them. Okay. All right. Callan, you are so good at it. Thank you. Okay, let's read that. Each morning, we must hold out the chalice of our being to receive, to carry, and give back. And Doc Hammarskjöld is someone I admire also. He was the first Secretary General of the UN, and great guy, killed in a plane crash going in to do some good work in Africa. Okay. Oh yeah, it was equity. You can read all about it. Okay, so let's all get together and that's good to hear, everybody chatting. And welcome to Colin. Colin, haven't seen you for a while. Thank you for coming, and thank you for bringing your parents. Thank you for all the way from Arizona. That's great. And then I'm told we have a visitor from Milwaukee, a long-time UUer, so she can tell us if we're doing it right. Okay. The joys and concerns. I'll start. I am of course concerned, saddened, upset about the shooting of Charlie Kirk. You should be able to speak your mind in this country as you wish, whether I agree with you or not. So that's my concern.
Well, I'll share a small concern, maybe conspiracy theory. On Thursday night, Don and I were in Menominee at a meeting talking about the new independent redistricting commission legislation that's being developed to end gerrymandering in Wisconsin, hopefully, right? And what's going on in the country now concerning gerrymandering, it's maybe more important than ever. But as we left this, the Judicial Center in Menominee, there was a drone hovering over the parking lot. So, yeah, could be, somebody just playing around. It was 9 o'clock at night with the drone, but it just hovered around and was focusing in on the people who were leaving. So I was developing these conspiracy theories about who was spying on us with an independent redistricting legislation. So, let's hope that it was just some kid having fun, because the other option is just really creepy.
Need a pretty one. I don't know if this is a joy or... I was at the governor's residence on Friday. I don't know if anybody's ever been there. Got to meet the governor and his wife, too. It was the annual ceremony of life, gift of life ceremony, I think, for organ donor families of 2024, of which my husband was. And there were, I think, over 180 Wisconsin organ donors that year. And it was very well attended and somber, but a lot of gratitude. Heard from recipients, interesting stories. And met some fellow family members, and I might have some new connections there. So anyways, it felt good. Thank
you. I'm grateful to be back after a pretty long fall camp for football and first couple weeks of the season. Very grateful to be back. Very grateful to start the season 2-0 for River Falls, which is great. Yeah, and I'm happy that I could spend the weekend with my parents because they flew up here.
I'll put in the big rock for all the joys and concerns not expressed. And I would say, and my joy is that there is that effort going on for an independent redistricting commission, because it's much needed. Do I play that, or do you play it? Okay. Preface my talk with a poem that sort of relates. Poem that I wrote. I feel like I need to read them to people sometimes because they're just sitting there in my computer. I need to get out. This one's called North Pasture. There was a little stream that ran in spring from the swamp above the woods, through the woods, and down a slight grade to the pond. We kids loved that little creek, the way it bravely set out as the snow melted, weaving wide-eyed among the trees, clear pools forming now and then over last fall's leaves, and then a rivulet escaping to make a small waterfall over an exposed root, the smooth drape of it falling to make a low sound of water on stones. But I loved best where the creek left the trees and slid down a fold in the pasture, and I could see the brown grass, combed by this small current, waving under the water. For whatever reason, this was springtime to me. After my father graded the swamp so it drained faster, and he could plow that land, the creek was all business, did not care to be loved. It just had to funnel water to the pond. No more shy twists to get around trees. No more No more wavering grass underwater like the earth's tawny fur. That was all kid stuff. And this was the future. Dad plowing hard and the creek running fast. So, watershed preservation as community resilience. A watershed is an area from which water drains to a common body of water. I'm most familiar with the Kinnickinnic River watershed because I'm a member of the South Kinney Farmer-Led Watershed Council. That's a group of landowners and farmers who live in the South Kinney watershed and who get together to talk about how to be better stewards of the water that crosses our land and of the land itself. Last Sunday, here, we had our water ceremony in which people brought water or poured water from our well here into a common bowl and talked about where the water came from and why it was important to them. Wendy DePeso remarked that a community is like a watershed. I'd been thinking that same thing, and it was good to have other people, to hear that other people have thought about it also. In our ceremony last week, we brought water or used the water provided and told about the water it represented, and we poured it into the bowl. In doing that, we were almost literally a watershed. But every week, we bring our joys and concerns to this place, and we place a rock in water to mark them. We take the things that have happened to us personally, and we bring them here. That's a kind of a watershed. The purpose of the South Kinney Watershed Council is to, as I have said, be better stewards of the water that crosses our land and of our soil. We offer financial incentives to farmers and landowners to implement practices that allow us to do that. One of the practices you may have noticed when you've been driving around, especially in late fall or in the spring, is cover crops. I went to college in Northfield, Minnesota, and in the winter, after a windy day, the snow was brown after dirt being blown from the fields. The practice then was to harvest and then plow to be ready for spring. Farmers wanted the land to dry out and warm up quickly. And what's the loss of a little topsoil to the wind? Well, we know better now. That soil was important. I saw a presentation once by an agronomist who had himself photographed in a field that was beside an old cemetery. The cemetery was a couple of feet higher than the surrounding land. The cemetery had never been plowed, so it was the marker for how much soil had been lost to farming. Local farmers in River Falls can tell you the same thing. They have walking paths between fields that used to be lower than the field and now sit above it. You can see how this is probably rye, tillers out and covers the soil, hangs onto it. It's common now to see green sprouts coming up in the fall after harvest. Getting some rye to grow on a field before the ground freezes will hold a lot of soil in place during fall rains and spring runoff. Some farmers plant what they call a harvest mix, root crops that will grow and hold the soil and make pockets in it that will, as the radish decays, fill with water and loosen up the planting bed. My son did that one fall on a small field I could see from my office window. And all winter, I had the pleasure of watching deer dig for the rutabagas through the snow. In our communities, we plant cover crops too, and for a similar reason. Water is, of course, valuable and essential to life and to growing things. But if it falls as rain too hard or runs across a field rather than soaking in, it harms the soil. It wrecks the soil structure. Soil runs into the river. There are lots of things that are good for a community. Economic development, for one. Development that brings people jobs allows them to improve their lives and the lives of their families. They can buy or build better homes. They can get a safer, better, more efficient vehicle. They can travel. They can go for advanced training or college, and they can offer that to their kids, too. But if there's just a crush of development and it isn't planned or carefully considered, it can have an effect that's similar to a flood. Look at Mount Pleasant, Wisconsin. Foxconn came to town, and the elected officials bent over backwards to give them what they wanted, with very little but unfounded promises in return. 4 square miles of land were declared blighted and taken over by eminent domain. The people of Mount Pleasant have spent more than $100 million. Many of them had their homes and farms bulldozed, and only lately has Microsoft come along with a data center that's nothing like what was sold to the people by Foxconn. The cover crop that could have prevented this is good government, which I define as elected officials who listen to their constituents, do their own research, and not just on the internet, but out in the real world, talking to independent experts and to regular people, and who place the well-being of the community ahead of the new guys in town with their flashy promises. Planting a cover crop is like electing a candidate you feel will do a good job. It's good, but not enough. If you want to preserve and improve soil structure, you have to implement other stewardship practices. You can't be driving big machines over the field repeatedly. You can't douse it with chemicals. You have to watch the plants to see how they're growing and what they might need. And let's say the candidate you like gets elected. That's a great feeling. But you need to support that elected official as she works to pass legislation that will benefit the communities she represents, and be vigilant that she continues to be transparent and above board in her dealings. The structure of our communities depends on a commitment to democracy, as well as community investment, mutual respect, and personal responsibility. Another conservation practice that our Watershed Council encourages is buffer strips. You might have noticed that farmers sometimes plant right up to the fence line or the trees. I walk or ride my horse around fields, and even though I'm taking advantage of the kindness of the landowner who allows me to do so, I'm complaining inside. How much is this guy making off these last 6 rows of beans? They don't get any sun. They aren't going to pay off. And I have to walk over here and get my head scratched by the branches. Well, it turns out I'm right. Wendy sent me a video about buffer strips in which the farmer had been keeping careful track of how much he made off crops in various parts of his field. Close analysis showed that the rows next to the woods and the fences sucked up the same amount of resources per square foot in fertilizer and seed costs as all the rest of the field, but they paid back only 1/3 as much. He was losing money on what he'd planted so close to the edge. It made sense for him to put in a buffer strip. Oops, that's not it. Buffer strips are wide strips of perennials, usually clover or grass, that encircle a field. Some farmers bale them to remove some of the growth and to keep the trees from taking over. Our neighbor keeps bees, so his buffer strips are pollinator friendly. Buffer strips are there to slow the water down when it's running off a field and to catch any soil or extra nutrients that got away. So, how do communities provide buffer strips? Well, I think we're in a buffer strip right now. Churches, clubs, service organizations, teams, when people come together with a common goal, they strengthen the social fabric. We catch people who are in trouble and keep them safe. We add resilience, and we absorb some of the shocks that the weather or current events bring to our door. Almost every one of us here belongs to some kind of organization, whether formally or not. We know someone, and that someone knows someone else, and if we support each other, we're a buffer strip against the loss of social structure. We keep each other safe. Like Louis Armstrong said in that great song, A Wonderful World, I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. One conservation practice that we do not fund is art. I think the members of the council would really scratch their heads over art as a form of watershed preservation. But what I've come to think of as a cardinal rule of stewardship is keeping the soil covered. Cover crops, of course, to hold the soil and slow down the water. The crops themselves. A field of something is prettier than a field of bare dirt. My favorite landscape is oak savanna, and that isn't what you think of when you think of farming. But oak savannas are the result of indigenous people long ago farming, in a way, by setting fires to keep vegetation down so they'd be able to travel and hunt more easily. The oaks, with their thick bark, could survive the fires, but other trees couldn't. I think we have an innate desire to be in something like oak savannas, the way we love our parks and plant trees in our lawns. We strive to make our communities beautiful. That's not the most beautiful mural, but it's certainly an example of striving. And this one, you know, all the utility boxes are painted in River Falls. And all those artists chose something. There's one of Canada Goose. I like that one. Now, this one is Clyde, and all I know is that he was a town mascot, and he must have had quite an impact because that's a long time, since 1876. But there's Clyde, again, on our main street. We value order, so we group things in a certain way. We zone for industrial activities to take place at a distance from where people live. No truck driver wants to worry every time he backs up that he's going to run over a bike or a family pet, or worse. It's a safety thing. And it just looks better. I've noticed that over the years, people have come to appreciate prairie plants more than petunias and other colorful flowers. You can see it at the university in town. At the Dairy Queen corner, where I've been standing with others, holding signs several times in the past months, I've noticed the landscaping on the opposite corner, the university's title page, so to speak, where the flowers and grasses are prairie perennials. It's really pretty, but I think there might have been a time when I would have preferred the colors and textures of familiar annuals. My mind has been changed. And that's what art does. When we promote art, not just orderliness, and we have art around us, and the opportunity to make art, we have better mental health. Mental illness is an enormous drain on people, families, and communities. Anything we can do to mitigate that is better than a cover crop, better than a buffer strip. Art brings us together. Anyone who was at Art on the Kinney last week would agree with that, I think. When we watch live theater, which we're lucky enough to have the chance to do here often in River Falls, we're part of a group taking in the same information and participating in an art event. Brings us together. The farmer-led watershed councils were the result of research that showed that farmers, and people in general, don't necessarily respond to facts, especially from experts. I was really surprised when I heard that. They put more truck in what they hear from a family member, a friend, or a neighbor. And that's fair. There are so many complicated factors to protecting your community that depend on the community itself. So, while we can learn a lot of good ideas and principles about protecting our soil or our town, actually implementing those ideas come with practical roadblocks and questions. Working together with our neighbors who are living in the same context, we can learn together faster. We can solve complex problems and encourage each other to keep going toward our goal of a better future. So, knowing that about people's response to experts, the Farmers Union and other organizations reasoned, how about if we use that and let them hear about conservation from each other rather than from us? A healthy community already has its own watershed council, people talking to each other while they pick up trash or volunteer at an event or get into a conversation with a stranger while they're waiting for an oil change at the gas station. We're all our own little circle, and we link with other circles and make a big circle, and that links with another circle, and before long you have social fabric. Just as the Kinney drains into the St. Croix, which drains into the Mississippi, we are linked together. And I don't love to sew, but I can sew, and I know where there's fabric, you can make something, even if it's just a bag for carrying things. And in the case of a community, we carry each other. And in doing so, we preserve the soil that sustains us. Thank you. So, any questions?
We could test out the mic here. Is it on? Go ahead, Beth. Testing. All right. Well, good. Can I start? Lots of thoughts. Cover crop in a small way. Small cover crop. And Wendy could probably talk about this more. But I'm pleased that we can help out the local immigrant community, serving as a cover crop to keep them here instead of being washed away. We're going to have a winter clothing drive. It's going to be here on October 6th, where they'll use this building to display winter clothing, and any immigrants come in and take them. So I'm very pleased with that. Plus the other things, the training session that we had a week ago for ice observance. So that's a cover crop. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Maybe I said you could say something.
I just want to thank you. This was a wonderful presentation, and I really liked the way you created a parallel or a connection between cover crops and community. That was fantastic. Thank you.
I was. Hello? Okay. Yeah, I just want to second that. That was beautiful, Maureen. Because I do think of our own personal watersheds. You know, we have our own personal ones, and that we can tend to, and maybe sometimes not tend to. You know, but there's the greater ability to catch us, maybe downstream. And that everything matters. It all matters what we do. Really nice.
Just quickly, what, if any, is the relationship between this South Kinney Watershed group and the Kinney Land Trust?
They're not related. Sometimes they're mentioned. The Kinney Land Trust is mentioned at the meetings. I think at our most recent meeting, we were discussing, we have some money from the funding from the state, and we were trying to decide how to spend it. And then we had ideas. One was to help farmers pay for non-neonicotinoid treated seeds, which would be a great thing. But the decision was to know our goal is water and soil, and we have to stick with that. And then they also talked about small landowners, trying to reach them, and they decided that would be a Kinney River Land Trust goal. And so I contacted Kinney River Land Trust to see if we could, if they would help me put on a class, community ed, that would be called Managing Your Rural Property to Save the Kinney. And so that might be in the winter offering of courses. The Kinney River Land Trust is still pondering on it.
I can speak to that a little bit, as I was very involved in the Kinney River Land Trust for a long time, and there was a greater effort with the University of Wisconsin River Falls and ag in general in the region for watershed preservation. They had grant money to make that happen, so some efforts from that are still rippling, which is great. But
Yeah.
it's great to see that collaboration.
Yeah, it is, because Kinney River Land Trust is more for smaller landowners, feel more comfortable there. People in town feel like they have more of a say there. I think the Farmer-Led Watershed Council is a little bit intimidating because you're in a room with these guys who are farming 1,000 acres, and you feel like, I don't really belong here.
Just a little guy.
Yeah.
I really did appreciate this viewpoint, and I think that Unitarian Universalism in general, I look at as something to preserve my own feelings, because especially living in Arizona, which is traditionally sort of a conservative thinking area, and I'm surrounded by people that don't necessarily believe the same things, and I come to you, a UU, and I'm like, oh, okay, it is okay. I am.
I'm not the only one.
with like-minded people, and I think Unitarian Universalism in general just does that, and I especially am grateful for this community here for being the one that sort of holds. Yes, exactly.
Good. Okay. So, there's an administrative committee meeting following this service, and book club is choosing a new book.
Maybe.
Okay, you guys can read this as well as I can. Those look like all very worthy things coming up that we will be happy to hear about. I guess if people are listening in the future on this is me turning on something on my laptop and then working and just listening to it, so I better read it. So Tina Domeyer and Kate Ihus are building Belonging, they're building Belonging, and then the poetry group is meeting. That's on September 21st. Lynn Hughescamp is speaking on September 28 on Tending to Grief. the book club meets. They'll have chosen a new book by then, I think. And October 5, Ted Tollefson is speaking on practicing compassion. And there'll be a workshop after service, and the poetry group meets. So good for you, poetry group. Anne?
And as usual, the garden is producing lots of items in the kitchen. Please take things home with you. Fresh vegetables, potatoes today.
Oh, they're so good when they're fresh. And those beautiful sun gold cherry tomatoes. Those are so good. Yep.
I'm glad that Maureen talked about stewardship today, because as you see, the administration committee, which I'm in charge of, is meeting after the service, and one of the items is giving the final okay from the committee before it goes to the board to our pledge letter that kicks off the stewardship campaign. So fair warning, you'll be getting a letter in a week or so. But stewardship is important.
Yeah. It's all not rye seeds and buffer strips. Okay.
Oh.
That's the stewardship.
The location is a basket on a chair. We're pretty low-key about that as you leave.
Okay, and as I have done before, I'm closing us out so early. I hope,
Okay.
yeah.
There's lots of food in there.
There's a lot of food, lots to talk about. So let's do our closing words.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Oh, we're gonna have trouble here. Yeah. We're gonna come in a little bit.
I feel like this is an issue that occurs like every time.
Spatial awareness.
Go out into the
The
world.
world in peace,
Have
have courage, question all things, hold on to what is good, return to no person